Welcome to Sterling Visionary Voices, the podcast dedicated to bringing you diverse, innovative leadership insights and actionable strategies for success. Join hosts Laura McNeil and Bob Medeiros as they explore the art and science of role model leadership through thought-provoking conversations with real professionals. Whether you're a seasoned leader or aspiring to excellence, Sterling Visionary Voices is your guide to navigating the complexities of your leadership journey.
Intelligence might get you in the door, but emotional intelligence, that's what runs the room. In this world full of tight deadlines and ever-evolving noise, the leaders who stand out are not those that are the loudest. They are those that are most aware. They realize that emotions drive decisions and decisions shape lives. Today, we are diving into the associated skills that quietly make a difference. The real power behind managing emotions, reading, understanding, and influencing people. The skill you build in order to start responding like a pro, winning without saying a word. April Frank is president of Innovative Edge, located in Boca Raton, Florida. Innovative Edge specializes in organizational training and consulting in emotional intelligence, leadership development, managing change, strategic planning, effective communication, conflict resolution, and resilience. As a facilitator and executive coach, April and her team work with leaders and their teams to create increased coherence and improve individual and organizational performance. For over 25 years, she has improved leadership effectiveness, increased productivity in the private and the public sectors, including manufacturing, service, technology, healthcare, government, education, and financial institutions. It's quite an impressive list. April and her team have created the comprehensive development program for leaders titled Emotional Intelligence, Differentiating Competence and Leadership Effectiveness. April is accredited by the Hay Group, Korn Ferry, and administers the Emotional and Social Competence Inventory Assessment authored by Daniel Goleman and Richard Boyatzis, as well as the Leadership Competencies Portfolio. She is licensed and certified by the Institute of Heart Math to provide the Inner Quality Management Emotional Competency Tools trainings and programs. Welcome to Visionary Voices, April. I am just super delighted to have you as a guest.
It is my pleasure to be here, Laura. I've been really looking forward to this.
Not sure about you, but honestly, I've left some conversations with leaders on occasion thinking, well, geez, that could have gone better. So I'm wondering if we could start out our conversation today with a definition of what emotional intelligence is.
That's actually an excellent place to start because there are some common misconceptions in defining EI is important to understanding really its value and application. So I'll start with just a definition that I frequently help people begin to learn about this with, and that is it's the capacity for recognizing our own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves, and for managing emotions well in ourselves and in our relationships. Now, that's a definition. Daniel Goleman, best-selling author of one of the first books that brought emotional intelligence to the mainstream, so to speak, in 1995, he took the theory of emotional intelligence, originally published by Peter Salovey and John Mayer, and worked that into a definition that could be digested. I'll just add one more piece to that, and that is that what does that mean behaviorally? This breaks down into a competency model that defines what it looks like behaviorally. So one of the things we look at is what is EI or emotional intelligence and what is it not? It's not measured the same way you measure IQ. It's a broader range of intelligence, and it's the strongest predictor of success in life, not just success in business, but in personal relationships. And also when we think about what it is not, a lot of the misconceptions is, well, emotional intelligence means being nice to people, overgeneralized in a polarity of lacking emotional intelligence is being reactive, lacking emotional intelligence is having outbursts. And if you have emotional intelligence, you're nice and you never have a bad day. And that's just an overgeneralization. But I will say it's not about being soft and it's not about being emotional. It's not about people pleasing. It's about the behavioral and cognitive capacities to have experiences in our interactions in our environments that are highly productive and especially effective in leadership.
Great, thank you for that. Where have you seen the application of emotional intelligence to be the most practical and relevant for the clients and the leaders that you have worked with?
Oh, that is another great question. Practical is an important word because a person could listen to this podcast or they could attend a lecture on emotional intelligence and they would learn about it. But translating that and transferring that into a practical behavioral application takes focus, it takes goal setting, it takes tools. Now, you said in our intro, you've walked away from some meetings with leaders and thought, well, that could have gone better. So, practical application, and it has a lot to do with communication. And this would be, of course, in leadership or in peer to peer, team to team communication, or even in one's personal life. But that capacity to really, really listen at a really deeper, more coherent level. And when we're listening at that level, we're regulating ourselves. So the emotional competency, they begin with self-awareness. Like if we were in front of a whiteboard right now, I would draw a pyramid shape or a triangle shape. And at the base of that, I would write self-awareness. Self-awareness is the foundational competency for emotional intelligence, in that we have more self-awareness. From that self-awareness, and that's emotional self-awareness as well as awareness of where we have strengths or whether we call them weaknesses or opportunities to develop. Then we go to self-regulation, communication and listening. Are we able to self-regulate, to be truly present to what the other person is communicating, whether we agree with it or not, right? Whether we are able to fully listen, make sure that person feels heard. Now that takes us into, again, if we're drawing on a whiteboard, we have the self-awareness at the foundation of that triangle. Then we have self-management. Right above that would sit self-motivation. Let's go up one more level and we have empathy. Empathy, understanding others, the ability to recognize where someone is coming from, what they might be feeling, even though they may not be expressing it. So now we can tune in, we can listen more effectively. And from that, we would go to the top of that diamond, which is social skills, the ability to demonstrate the influence, relationship management, communication, team building, building bonds, change catalyst. So coming back to your question on practical application, when people complete the coaching and training programs that I do, I hear the communication has improved, both the listening and the speaking, in terms of being able to engage in communication. One of the tools that we teach is called balancing advocacy with inquiry and making your thinking and reasoning more visible. So when you're in communication and you're having to advocate or just express your opinion on something, are you then able to say, this is my view, this is how I arrived at it, here are some assumptions that I've had, and now what do you think of that? Or what challenge would you give to me on this topic? So that's the advocacy balanced with the inquiry. That's one. What are you thinking as I'm communicating that? Very practical. It seems so basic, but after all these years of this, Laura, I am continually seeing the real efficiencies that are increased in how teams and leaders talk with one another when they are not getting distracted by the emotional undercurrents, or they're not leaving a lot of assumptions in the dialogue that aren't validated. That's just one. You asked me for a few, but I've been speaking for quite a while on that one because it's so powerful.
Well, and that was a great reference to cite. So, curious, do you think achieving that higher level of emotional intelligence requires a little bit of humility or becoming more humble and exercising more humility in order to really get to that empathetic level?
Well, I will say that from the thousands of folks that I have trained and coached over the years, most of the time, there's a leader that has made a decision that they would like to provide this training and coaching for their department, their company, their team. And so there might be 20, 25 people in a group, and they've been sent to the training, right? I mean, we do have programs where people sign up by self open enrollment or whatever, and that's a little different thing. But what I will say is those people who are open, humble, if you want to use that word, is fine. They are open to recognizing there's more for me to learn. I can learn something. It's interesting because most of the time, those are the people that if you were just observing them, you would not say they need emotional intelligence development. You just wouldn't. They seem to be functioning at a very high level with EI. Now, and so those who come about it with a willingness to develop and a growth mindset, growth, they have much more growth as an experience of that. Those who resist still do have growth because once we get started, they realize the opportunities. And it's funny because you mentioned humility. I just got an email the other day from a gentleman who was a participant in one of these teams that I mentioned was sent to a training. And although he's given permission to me that I can, anytime I want to use his name, I'm not going to do that. But he said, it's hard to fully put into words, I'm reading from his email, how much this training and coaching has meant to me. It has been life changing. You helped me look at myself with more honesty, grace, and courage than I ever had before. You helped me recognize not only my strengths, but also the places where I still need to grow. And that awareness has changed me both personally and professionally. I have become more thoughtful, empathetic, and effective leader. I lead with more intention, I listen more carefully, and I show up for others in a more meaningful way. And then he went on to describe some of the attributes that he transformed. Now, this was someone who said, when this training started, I was very cynical. He's a very intelligent a leader in a company. He's very, very intelligent, technical field. He is really outstanding in his success around the technical side. But where he was failing was on the people relationship side of things. And so he did exhibit humility, and nobody that worked with him thought that he would. But he did. And it did open him up to that growth. Going back to the people who already demonstrate that willingness, but look like they have a strong EI, I can think of an executive that was sharing with me in the coaching sessions specific examples of how he had a big eye-opening awareness through his. And when we say training, we're talking about a very focused development. A person must set behavioral goals that they can work toward to measure. We don't say we're just going to improve our emotional intelligence. We want that to become emotional competence in the behavior. So he did that, felt maybe I could be a better listener, and nobody would have said that, but he himself did become, and he had a very personal experience that touched him very deeply on what he realized he was missing, where he could have been listening more deeply. So the humility, I would say the openness is a wonderful starting point.
That was a really powerful story. I'm wondering if you ever run across leaders that engage your services and they want you to come in and fix their team without them playing a part in the fixing.
Oh boy, that is a common experience out there. I will say it isn't, so this exists quite a bit. It hasn't been a frequent experience for me, and I will explain why. Most of the time, when leaders want to bring this training and coaching in, it's because they have themselves done the training and coaching, and they know they want to be involved. Actually, it's not about I have to. They want to be because they have developed that resonant relationship with their teams. That said, I can think of a couple of companies I've worked in for years where there will be April, we've tried everything with this person, and we would like to know if you would be willing to coach. They're thinking of it more as we really want to help this person. And no matter what we're doing, it doesn't seem to be working, and we want to give this one more chance. Would you be willing to do that? And one of the first questions I ask is, what is the leader of this person's mindset on this? What is their role going to be? Because they have to be fully engaged, working sort of in partnership with me. And then there are those cases where a person is really just struggling with something that is beyond the scope of EI development and coaching, and that it's other times it's just that there has been a mismatch on providing the method or format, because I've been able to help people really get to a point of breakthrough. This gentleman that I was reading the email from, he was one of those. Not that they were about to dismiss him or anything, but people didn't believe he could make the progress he did, and the method, the approach, the tools, because we're teaching some very specific tools based in the neuroscience and the physiology of how our brains perceive and how we get triggered. That has to be part of the training for people to make progress. So yeah, and I don't like to think about come in and fix. This gentleman wrote in the bottom of his message to me, he said, "You've helped me become a better person." And I had to let him know he's already a really good person. He's just become, in certain triggering moments, disconnected from his true values, and helped him reconnect with how to regulate and really come more from the heart and soul and true identity that he is, that had gotten all covered up and distracted by his, it's real easy to say, well, somebody's got low EI because they're reactive. Well, in those moments, that's true. They haven't been able to demonstrate the behavior of self-regulation or how to perceive more accurately something that might be a threat. This is coming up a lot with AI adoption. But in fact, that person's competence in EI can be developed with the right tools and approaches.
So, if I could read between the lines of the stories and the references you've provided, folks can start building their EI on their own by exhibiting a couple of, or exercising, maybe is a better word, exercising a couple of different behaviors in their day-to-day routines, such as listening to others, perhaps taking a pause before reacting and considering a bigger picture impact to how to react, remaining calm, and kind of I feel that you're touching a little bit on building the belief in self where we can solve it. It's not all on me. I need to collaborate with others to solve challenges. Who are those others? Let me take into consideration what other people are perceiving or seeing in order to come up with the best approach to resolve challenges Did I get that right, or are there things that you would tweak in that?
I would give it a slight tweak. Actually, you just demonstrated balancing advocacy with inquiry. You just said, here's how I'm seeing or how I'm summarizing this. And would you tweak that, or how do you see that differently? You just demonstrated that. And so the only tweaks, if you want to say, I would say, is everything you said was accurate, Laura. There's nothing inaccurate in what you said. It's that it's a cognitive. If everybody that's listening to this podcast said, okay, I'm going to do exactly what April and Laura just said, they would have very minimal success, because it's a cognitive decision that if you already knew that, you'd be doing it. So we come back to some basic, where can I begin? I would say where you could begin is start with self-awareness of your triggers. Spend a couple of weeks where you just pause 3 or 4 times a day. And we actually have this as an opening exercise just to get people more aware, and just say, what am I feeling right now? And why am I feeling this? And how is it affecting me? Now, you're not necessarily going to do that in the middle of a conversation with someone. You may have to do it afterward. But I also say to practice some of this, find a TV program or find something where that person who speaks triggers you. Maybe it could even be a politician that is your opposite of what your belief system is, believe it or not. And try to listen without what you already believe, in terms of how am I going to oppose this person, right? Or no, they're crazy, or no, I don't agree with this. But really just pause and practice listening. It's really a low risk situation, because if you lose it, nobody gets hurt. But it's a way to practice that regulation and deeper listening. Where is this person coming from? Oh, what are their talking points? That's another thing to practice. So it all starts with awareness. And then once you begin to understand your trigger points, it could be a tone of voice, it could be a topic, it could be over identification with something. It could be a lot of things that we don't have time for in this short podcast. But then from there, now you can start to observe yourself in conversations, or in maybe it's a Teams meeting at work, where you're noticing you're tuning out, or you're getting triggered, or even once you have that awareness, now you have the capacity to start to move into the regulation. Well, the regulation is of your nervous system. It's regulating your nervous system, which involves regulating your breathing and some other steps that we don't really have time for today. But that's that capacity now to then have that growth mindset of, is this about me in this moment, or is this about how do we, right, accomplish as a team? Or in the case of where, there are more than one people involved, we're all united by a common goal here. What is our common goal? And try to communicate from what we have in common. I'd like to also reinforce that practice of make your thinking and reasoning visible to others. So instead of just saying, well, here's what I think about this, or this is what I want to do about this, say some more. Here's the context. Here are some assumptions. The reasoning that leads me to this decision and conclusion is, what do you think of that? Bring that practice in more often. And boy, that really enables people to feel like you are interested in them and their point of view, and enables them to feel valued. But it has to be genuine. You really have to come from your heart in your approach to these things.
Thank you, April. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've learned a lot. Would love to have you back.
It's my pleasure, and I hope to be back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Sterling Visionary Voices, Insights for Role Model Leadership from the Sterling Council. Discover more and connect with us at sterlingvisionaryvoices.com.